On December 27, 2022, 24-year-old Brian Camp was home asleep with his girlfriend Brooke Janik and their 2 young children. While they slept, 27-year-old Jonathan Latender broke into the home. He is Brooke's ex-boyfriend. Jonathan attacked Brian. Brooke woke up and called 911. The men continued to fight. Then a gunshot goes off. Jonathan, the intruder, is struck. Meanwhile, the 911 call continues and records everything that happens, including a second gunshot 8.5 minutes later. That second shot ends the life of Jonathan. After law enforcement responds and investigates this fatal shooting, Brian Camp is charged with manslaughter. Prosecutors claim the first gunshot was justifiable in self-defense, but the second gunshot more than 8 minutes later constitutes homicide. Now all the evidence is in and the arguments have been made, and it's time to hear from the jury. But first, it is one of Court TV's most legendary trials, the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric. In 1989, their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, were murdered. It was a shocking crime scene that looked like a mob hit. Jose and Kitty were shot several times as they sat on their couch, eating ice cream and watching a movie. At first, Eric and Lyle were treated as victims, but when their therapist's ex-girlfriend came forward with information that the brothers had confessed during therapy sessions, everything changed. Eventually, the brothers were charged. At trial, they claimed to be the victims of sex abuse and violence. The first juries could not reach a unanimous verdict, and there was a mistrial. But when they were retried, they were convicted, spared the death sentence, and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. But now there is new attention on the case, and many are calling for the Menendez brothers to get out. And today, another huge hearing in Los Angeles, and we have the latest on the Menendez brothers' battle for freedom.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And a big day, a lot of things always on the docket here at Court TV, but for a holiday week to be this busy, extremely unusual. But let's get to it. And we begin with the Menendez brothers. Come on, folks, they did it. They did it, okay? Everything that's happening now has nothing to do with the merits of the underlying charges, which are that they murdered their parents in a brutal way. They planned, they plotted it, and they executed it. They did not admit it after it happened. As a matter of fact, they covered it up. All of that is true. All of that is true. The new evidence that they say has come to light has nothing to do with anything related to the actual murder of their parents. Okay? What it is, it's really about one of the victims, Jose Menendez, their father, and was he a predator? Was he a predator or not? Some people believe he absolutely was. Some people believe he wasn't. The new evidence, or so-called new evidence, is connected to that and his actions, whether he had abused one of the members of the Menudo boy band years ago to sort of validate the fact that, yeah, this guy was a predator. He was a bad man. Then you have this letter that was allegedly written by Eric Menendez to a cousin, talking about his father and his fear of his father prior to the murders and taking place. All of this has to do with Jose Menendez. But don't forget, this is a double murder. Kitty, also a victim. And they had to reload to kill Kitty. And this is, say what you want about Jose Menendez. Kitty Menendez was not a threat to these 2 young men. Regardless of what you think about her participation or allowing her boys to be sexually abused by her husband, you can make whatever arguments you want there. But once Jose Menendez is taken out, Kitty is no longer a threat. What she is a witness, number one, and number two, she's also someone that would have access or have the rights to the family's money. Okay, now you can talk about psychological damage. Yeah, there are arguments there if you want to make them. But when you talk about like an actual physical threat or threat to do something to the boy, no, not so much. And that's when, from my perspective, when I look at this case, I have to look at the double murder, but I have to separate the murders and look at each one individually, each victim individually, and why were they taken out. I think it's important. So that brings us to the ultimate question, which is, do these convicted double murderers deserve a second chance? And there's a lot of people who think they do. There's a lot of people who think they don't. But just the fact that there are people who believe convicted double murderers deserve a second chance speaks about the nature of this case and why it is where it is and why the discussion is happening. So the Menendez brothers were scheduled to be in court today. Here they are years ago. But they had a hearing today. And we've been talking about all the things that are going on. They filed a habeas motion to get the conviction thrown out, to have a second chance at their case. There's also the case that's been filed by the sitting LADA, Gascon, who has filed this motion for a resentencing. And then you have the governor who was out there as well, Governor Gavin Newsom, talking about the potential to set them free as well, to provide some sort of relief. Now, here's the media outside the courthouse today, and there are a lot of them. Not a lot of room inside the courtroom, and no cameras inside the courtroom, so you can't see or hear anything that happened. So they had the hearing today, which seemed to be about setting a date for the resentencing sometime in January to give the newly elected DA time to get up to speed on the case. He takes office on December 2nd. A hearing was scheduled for the 11th, but that's been pushed to January. But we did have some things that happened inside the courtroom today, which was the testimony of the sisters of the two victims in the case. And they appear to be on the side of the Menendez brothers, despite the fact that their brother, their sister, murdered by their children. They believe the children should be getting out. Here's Mark Garagos, who represents Menendez brothers, after court today, and then you'll hear the voice of one of the aunts.
For those who weren't in the courtroom today, I think you could talk to anybody who was. It was a very, it was first of all, the first time that Lyle and Eric have been at least remotely in a courtroom in a number of years, number one. It also was quite a moving experience, at least from where we sit, to listen to Aunt Terry and Aunt Joan, who are respectively Jose and Kitty's older sisters. Both made impassioned pleas with the judge to send the brothers home. The judge has now set January 30th and 31st as the days for a plenary or fulsome hearing on the resentencing. He has also invoked what's called AB 600, so he has jurisdiction under that section as well, which is California law. He's going to and has heard and will ask for further briefing, and by January 30th or 31st, we're hoping that by the end of that or sometime sooner that we will in fact get the brothers released. You can tell them you want them home.
I do want them home. They should never have been in such situations as presented themselves. What can a kid do when his father's... Oh, I can't stand it.
35 years is a long time.
So there was some chatter that there was some hope, I think, from people supporting the Menendez brothers that they could be home for the holidays, for Thanksgiving. That's not happening. Christmas, that's not happening. As you heard from our Garagos, at the end of January is when all this is now scheduled for on the resentencing. So to get some insight and perspective of all this, joining me tonight, Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney, the man who prosecuted Robert Durst, John Lewin, joining us tonight. John, great to see you. Let me ask you this. One of the things that seemed to come out of today is more time for the newly elected DA, who will be sworn in, shortly, December 2nd, to get up to speed on all of this. Does that mean this could potentially not go forward on the 30th if the new DA doesn't agree with the old DA's assessment of the case? Could he withdraw all of this and just make it all go away?
So, Vinnie, the first thing that I need to make sure that I clarify is that I'm here not as a representative of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office or of George Gascon, who is still the DA for a few more days. That's number one. In terms of what's going on with the process is very important. And it's the process that's really been ignored here by George Gascon from the start. To answer your question very quickly, the judge made clear that the judge, needs more time to go through everything that's involved, and that also he wants to make sure that the new DA, Nathan Hochman, is given the opportunity to review all of the information and to figure out how he wants to proceed. I think obviously that is the right thing to do, and it's especially, I think, appropriate given the history of what's happened with this case. And as I think you and your viewers know, George Gascon has had a failing administration for the last 4 years. More than about a year and a half ago, the defense filed their habeas petition, which is separate. There's going to be, tomorrow is, I think, the deadline for the DA's office to file their response or opposition to the defense habeas request. The habeas request is simply legally insufficient, as it brings up issues that have nothing to do with the actual legal standard by which both defendants were convicted. But for a year and a half, that case basically sat. And then all of a sudden, when George Gascon realized that there was going to be a very damaging story coming out in the LA Times involving a woman who had murdered 2 people as a juvenile, was supposed to be tried as an adult, and then Gascon had come in, had reversed that. She had served a short time in a juvenile facility, gotten out, and murdered again. So he immediately realizes this is coming out. And of course, what does he do? He does what he always does. He schedules a press conference. And at this press conference, he starts talking about Menendez. So the biggest problem that you have here is not ultimately what is going to happen to the Menendez brothers, but it's, are we going to have a proper process, and are we going to follow and live up to our ethical responsibilities? George Gascon basically decided, for political reasons, that he was going to support a resentencing. He did that without having talked to the prosecutor who was working on the case. He doesn't know basic facts. And then he had, writing this motion, a public defender who he brought over. So let me make sure your viewers understand. The person who wrote this motion, Nancy Theberge, was a public defender for nearly 30 years. A short time ago, she was in charge of their resentencing unit. She came over and immediately is placed in charge of our resentencing unit. So she's gone from basically filing cases with the DA's office saying, hey, I want to have this individual resentenced, handling those cases, to now all of a sudden she is the person deciding. If that doesn't sound kosher to your viewers, it's because it really isn't. And that was really demonstrated by the motion they filed. That motion left out numerous pertinent facts. It looked like and read like it was written by a defense attorney, because it was. We have a duty of candor as prosecutors to the court, meaning that we are legally obligated to make sure that we advise the court of all facts, all law which we are aware of, which is relevant and pertinent to the case. And they left out in their motion numerous facts that they just ignored, kept out of the motion, because in the end, it doesn't look very good when you include those facts for Lyle and Eric Menendez's position.
Let me jump in for just a second, John, on that point. So what you're saying is a prosecutor has the candor, and usually what a prosecutor must do is reveal the stuff that makes the defendant perhaps look good, and sometimes prosecutors might get accused of not doing that. Here you're saying it's the exact opposite, that the prosecutor is not revealing things that normally would make a defendant look bad?
Yes, there are a legion of them. So when they wrote their motion, I believe they characterized what they were going to have in the motion as a brief statement of facts. What that really meant was they were going to leave out any facts which were damaging. So they started with the shooting and never, ever mentioned any of the absolutely repeated behaviors demonstrating premeditation and planning, etc. Just didn't cover it. They would say things like Lyle Menendez was a student at Princeton. Well, they never mentioned he'd been kicked out of Princeton for cheating. Eric Menendez was a student at UCLA. Well, they never mentioned that he had recently been caught burglarizing his friend's parents, 2 different residences. A bunch of information was kept out relating to their pre-offense conduct, the actual way the murders were carried out, and their post-offense conduct. And clearly this is not an accident. This was left out. You can read, and I would recommend that people do this. There is a Court of Appeals opinion from California that goes through, by the court, that goes through this case. There is then a Ninth Circuit opinion that goes through this case. When you read those opinions, and remember, these aren't by the DA's office. These are by the courts, by judges. Steve Trott, a legendary Ninth Circuit judge, wrote the Ninth Circuit opinion. When you compare them to the motion that was filed by Nancy DeBurge, you end up asking yourself, are we even talking about the same case? They don't include anything. I'll just give you an example from today that's important, that demonstrates who these people are and what their allegiances are. Kathy Cady, who is an ex-DA, is representing Kitty Menendez's brother. Under Marcy's law in California, she and her client have a right to be present. So Kathy gets there today. The DA's office is responsible for making sure that she is made aware, and they get her a ticket. When she gets there, she notices that a bunch of lawyers are going into the judge's chambers. She doesn't know who those lawyers are. When they come back out, those lawyers are sitting basically on the other side of the public area with the lawyers. It turns out these were the lawyers for the other Menendez relatives who are supporting what, in fact, Mark Garagos and the defense are doing. So they go back and they speak to the judge, and Kathy Cady and her client are left out. They're not even advised. They don't even sit with the rest of them. And when Kathy asks Nancy DeBurge, hey, what's going on here? She says, oh, well, those lawyers, the family lawyers are part of, quote, Mark Garagos's team. What? That's what's going on. So here's the problem. You've got a bunch of defense attorneys in that court and no prosecutors.
Wow.
No one is serving as a prosecutor, and no one is there trying to make sure that Jose and Kitty Menendez, the victims in this case, and let's be clear, they were the ones who were murdered. You have nobody there who is trying to make sure that their rights are protected from the grave and that their loved ones' rights are protected. So again, this is not about what the ultimate decision is going to be in this case. This is about making sure that the process is followed.
John Lewin, appreciate your time and your insight, and I know we'll be speaking again as we get closer to this, and anytime anything else happens out in L.A., thanks so much. Have a great Thanksgiving. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll bring in our think tank, get their take on everything happening out in L.A., plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the shooting death of Kentucky Judge Kevin Mullins. The accused killer, local Sheriff Mickey Steins, back in court today. Why would the sheriff shoot the judge? We investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
$1,000 in daily prizes.
Say this again. Next ticket I call, I want you walking in through this path here, please.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Al, please. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, ready for the next ticket. 6942.
6942. 6942.
Right here, man.
Those are the folks trying to get inside the courtroom for the Menendez brothers. They had a little lottery for the limited seats that were left. And what a scene. What a day. Let's get some reaction. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III. Also with us, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to see everyone. All right, Al, you heard from John Lewin, who's sort of an insider, you know, speaking for himself, but kind of giving us some insight into how all this went down. You brought in a 30-year public defender that wrote the motion and was trying to get the Menendez brothers out. The man in charge of the office, out of office in a couple days. What do you think is going to happen here?
They also forgot to mention the fact that he was looking for he was looking to be reelected, and he wasn't doing too well. So he figured, what the heck, throw out the Menendez brothers and bring something along those lines. It may get me votes. And so, you know, it was definitely a political stunt. From what's being said, you know, from your guest, I mean, it is a situation that, you know, I don't think they really have a snowball's chance with regards to same. If all of that information was not included and none of that had been discussed and none of that has been put forward to the new prosecutor and he's going to start reviewing it with all of those warts, I don't see how they're getting out.
So you think this completely changes everything? Because I thought it was a sure thing. If you've got the DA on board, Darnell, if the DA is coming in saying, let this guy out, let this guy out. But now we don't know what the new DA is going to say.
Well, the sad thing about this is that this is all politics, as Al says. And I have no reason to doubt Al, except for the fact that he's Al Wunsch. If Al happened to be correct today, again, which would be shocking, then the troubling part about this is that we're not looking at this as a decision based in law. It's all about politics. So if the other DA wanted to get a splash and get reelected, let's do something, you know, salacious like this. If the new DA, if somebody's in his ear saying that you should go the other way, then he may just go that way because it may be it's not politically sound to support the Menendez brothers. But the bottom line is they've been in jail for 35 years. They went in, they were really young. You got Miller versus Alabama that talks about sentencing of young kids and the developmental stages and all that stuff. And you have family members who are crying for them to come home. So I think we should focus on that and not on the politics.
Jennifer Brandt, what are your thoughts now? Because, I mean, we don't know what the new DA is going to think of this. We know that he ran on actually prosecuting criminals in Los Angeles, unlike the current DA. So what do you think the chances are that the first high-profile thing he does is set 2 double murderers free?
Well, Vinny, first of all, I hate when Al and Darnell fight like they do, but, you know, it is part of the think tank. But I really think that there is a political climate going on here, new DA or not. And their case has really been in the spotlight with the Netflix show and the documentary. So a lot of people are talking about this. There's a lot of hype around it. And you've got family members saying that these men should have never been sentenced like they have for so long, and they, should be let free. And so I think there's a lot of outside pressure on the DA. It'll be interesting to see if he takes a stance now that we have huge momentum and a lot of people thinking that the Menendez brothers are going to be released. So it's a question of whether he will take a different stance at this point. Maybe he will, just because he is new and wants to show that this is the way he's going to handle things in his own way and not just do what was done before. So it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, it was. I believed it was a sure thing as long as Gascon was there, but now the way the election went, the schedule went, this thing is pushed till January. Gascon is yesterday's news. They also have the opportunity, Gavin Newsom could step in for clemency, but that's a risky political move as well. He may just say, whatever the DA says, I'm fine with. So we shall see. We'll stay on it. Think Tank staying with us because I've got a red tie on. Oh, it was verdict day for Brian Kemp. We've got all the drama next.
On it today.
And what was he doing at that time?
Coming at me.
Okay.
With a shotgun barrel.
Okay.
And I was not going to get hit in the head with a shotgun barrel again inside my own house. I tried to scare him with the muzzleloader. Didn't work. Tried to wrestle me for it. Was scared for my life then. Wrestled him over the shotgun. And then, sorry. I hope if I ever did that, somebody would put me down. That's all I hope. You know what I mean?
That's Brian Kemp. He's at home with his girlfriend sleeping. 2 young children in the house. Girlfriend's ex breaks into the house, tries to kill him, attacks him while he's naked. He's fighting. A couple of guns are involved. He gets him into a hold. The guy won't leave. The guy keeps coming after him. He finally grabs another gun, shoots him. They call 911. 8.5 minutes later, a second shot that ends up taking his life. He was charged with manslaughter. The guy who was home sleeping is charged with manslaughter. Here's today's shocking verdict.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, as the jury agreed upon its verdict in Hampshire County Indictment 2380 CR 0032, Commonwealth versus Brian Kemp?
Not guilty.
You have agreed upon your verdict?
I have.
Yeah, that's okay. If you could please give the verdict sum to the court officer.
Inquiry.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, as to count 1 of Hampshire County indictment charging the defendant Brian Kemp with manslaughter, is he not guilty or guilty as charged?
Not guilty.
That was a little unusual, but wow, what a moment. In that moment, his life has changed completely as to what it could have been. Let's bring in our think tank to get reaction to this verdict. Still with us, Al Wunsch III, Darnell Crossland, Jennifer Brandt. Darnell, I know you've heard those words many times in a courtroom, not guilty. So exactly. So before we get into the merits of this case, this is someone who was facing years in prison, charged with manslaughter. What is next? What now for Brian Kemp after he walks out of that courtroom a free man?
Well, this was a just verdict to me. They wanted this guy to come out of jail when the police cars looked like the Menendez brothers. The police cars changed over the decades. But this was a just verdict. You can't be in your house sleeping and some jealous ex breaks in, and now we're going to parcel out 8 minutes, the second shot, the third shot. I mean, same thing with the police officers. They start shooting 41 times. The adrenaline's going. A lot of things are happening. And maybe there's some things in the middle that we could play with. But, the Catholic doctrine, stay out of somebody's house. Don't break in somebody's house and try to take them out. I think it was a just verdict. And what's going to be next? He's going to have to, probably have some psychological therapy, just like police officers do who end up killing someone. And he's going to have to get his life back together. People think it's very easy just to kill someone and just go on with your business. But I'm sure there's a lot on his mind. and he's going to have to get some therapy. But I think it's a just verdict.
Jennifer Brandt, the jury spoke very loudly, right? That not guilty means he's the victim. He's the victim, but he's the one dragged into court. He's the one facing decades behind bars. What do you think the rest of his life looks like?
Well, I agree with Darnell. I mean, he has to get his life back together. And it's been, 2 years that he's been in this limbo of not knowing what's going to happen with his life. And, you know, it was sort of a strange case to prosecute to begin with, in my opinion. I mean, someone was in his house. He defended himself. I think everyone agreed that the first shot was self-defense. It was the second shot. And if you listen to his police interviews, and he was sort of in a state of shock himself, didn't really even know what happened initially, couldn't even recount that there was a second shot or how much time was in between the shots. So clearly he was very frightened when this happened, and reacted. I think the jury sort of understood that he reacted like many people might react if they are someone invades their home in the middle of the night. He's home with his girlfriend and 2 small children. I mean, it was a scary situation for him. Tragic ending for the other victim here, but certainly, as Darnell pointed out, you have the castle doctrine, and someone coming into your home should have never happened. So I think he's going to get on with his life, but I think it is going to be certainly difficult for him because he's had a lot of time to really wonder of what, how, and he could, if he could, put his life back together again.
Al, what I want to do before you jump in here, I want you to take a listen to what the attorneys had to say in their closing arguments, because we know one of these arguments won, one of them lost. We'll hear the defense, then we'll hear the state.
And here's how it started for Mr. Camp. Seeing a silhouette of a guy who we now know is 6 feet tall, 190 pounds, in his bedroom, and sets on Brian Camp almost immediately. Brian Camp is scrunched up, as you hear, is scrunched up to the end of his bed as he's trying to get up and figure out what's going on. And this guy gets on him with his knees and grabs him by his throat and is choking him and slams his head into the wall. That's the introduction of Brian Camp to this event planned by Jonathan Latender, an event that took place for 19 minutes. To this point, Brian Camp has been choked, punched, head slammed into his own bedroom wall, knelt upon, fallen down to the floor with this guy in a battle, both upstairs and downstairs. He's got a broken hand. He's had to wrestle for a gun for his life. And imagine the psychological effect on the fact that this guy has the end of a gun in Brian's gut trying to pull the trigger. Brooke says to Brian, "Where on the body did you shoot him?" Brian says, "I don't care, dude. I don't know." Brian wants nothing to do with going near this guy. Brooke says, 14:15, they need to know. Dispatcher says, "Can you just ask him?" Brooke says, "I think he's looking." State police asked him to go near this guy. He goes at their request. And you heard him tell you what happened. This guy, who has done nothing but try to kill Brian Camp, is in his kitchen with this tolerance of pain. I mean, obviously Brian didn't know about hemorrhagic shock and all that kind of stuff, but he's going in to check on his status for the state police. And as Brian says, he comes around the corner and this guy is getting up. Nothing is stopping this guy. And you saw how Brian said it happened. He saw him and boom. This guy was going to kill Brian Camp even after he was shot.
Now, I said to you in my opening statement last Monday that I wasn't even going to try to sugarcoat the conduct of Jonathan Latender. in the early morning hours of December 27th, 2022. And I hope you find that I haven't. He was absolutely in the wrong when he drove up to Chesterfield that night, parked his car on the street, went into that house uninvited, unannounced. He was breaking the law. He was committing a felony. He deserved to be arrested. He deserved to be charged. He deserved to be tried in this very courtroom. He deserved to be convicted. And he probably deserved a long stay in state prison. But Brian Camp short-circuited and bypassed all of that. When he pointed his Sig Sauer P365 loaded with hollow-tipped bullets, pointed it at Jonathan Latender's head and pulled the trigger, he delivered his own verdict and he imposed his own sentence. Did that sound like a polished, rehearsed line? Did it sound on the interview like he had something to hide? Like he knew he had done something he shouldn't have done? So after not owning up to that second shot during his interview, despite multiple chances to do so by the state police, he takes the stand and he tells you a new version of what happened that night. Brian Camp may have taken an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth from that witness stand, but that doesn't mean that he did. He had to come up with a reason why he shot Jonathan Latender in the head. He was asked for that reason by the state police. He didn't own it. And he didn't own it on the stand during trial. He was not defending himself when he reached down and shot Jonathan in the head. He was putting him down, to use his own words. He was acting out of anger, retaliation, and revenge. And that the law does not permit.
Let me ask you, Al, in this case, was Brian Camp victimized twice? First by Jonathan Latender, who tried to kill him, and then by prosecutors who tried to lock him up?
No, 3 times, because there was a grand jury that indicted him. I mean, I don't understand how a grand jury would have indicted him under these circumstances. It's an absolute travesty to me that he had to sit there for this trial. And you know what? I got to tell you that the prosecutor, it really looks like he was just kind of phoning it in. He's doing the same arguments that we see from defense counsel when they have absolutely no other argument that they could possibly give. It's like, well, he's becoming the judge, the jury, and the executioner. I mean, and that is, you know, looking at his body language and everything along those lines. And whenever a prosecutor starts off with, listen, I didn't try to sugarcoat who this guy was and everything else. I mean, he already gave the game away at that point. And so it was just, I think he was forced to put this trial on because the grand jury, indicted. And I don't understand how that happened, because they certainly could have presented the evidence as such in a grand jury, and then they would have no-billed him under most instances. I don't know why they did this. It doesn't make any sense. This is a man in his home, naked, with a guy attacking him. He's got a wife, or he's got a girlfriend and 2 children in the household. What they didn't mention is that they found a knife on the guy in his jacket. They found handcuffs in his jacket. This was not going to be just the death of this individual, but it probably would have been the death of the woman also, and maybe even the kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know where the prosecutor lost me in that argument was, he says, yeah, Jonathan Latender deserved to be prosecuted, deserved to go to jail for what he did. No, he deserved to be shot and killed. It's called self-defense. He's trying to negate the ability of someone to defend themselves in their own home. In their own home. You break in, you get what you deserve. That's what self-defense is. It's justifiable. If it's justifiable, you deserved it. But jury agreed with me and you guys. We're out of time, Al. I think they even muted him. They even muted Al tonight. Look at that. Al, Darnell, Jennifer Brandt, thank you. We'll be back. Something else you need to know.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
What happened that night? Are you not prepared to take responsibility for any of your crimes?
Interview with a killer. Marathon starting Thursday, 11:10 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look behind the big board. 25 years for Susan Lawrence. Susan found guilty of manslaughter in August, the shooting death of A.J. Owens, a mom of a young 10-year-old son who got into some sort of confrontation with Susan. Then the mom is banging on her door. Susan fires her gun through the door, killing that mom. It was a horrible, tragic scene in the neighborhood that night. Let's take a look.
Where's your gun at? I don't know what's going on. You're going to be detained for now. Is there anybody else in the house?
I left my iPad over there because we were playing games. And I went to go get it. I said, give me my iPad because she had it. She dropped it, tried to throw the sticks at me.
Y'all love Mom. All right. Well, I got some bad news to tell you. Mom is not coming back anymore. Come. No. Come here. Come over here. Listen to me. No, I know. Okay. It's okay. I know. Okay. I know. I'm sorry.
When Susan killed Ashika, she took away my freedom. The plans that I had for my own personal life. Because Ashika is no longer here, I became the sole caretaker of 4 young children. My grandchildren, whom I love dearly. Susan killed the most important person, their rock, their support, their constant. She took that from them.
I've just been flummoxed about this whole case. I don't understand. I understand I have PTSD. This woman kept coming after me. I had approached her because I was worrying my plans. And she's going, oh, there's a crazy old white lady. And I'm like, you can't just go around saying someone's crazy. I mean, it was insanity. So I went to say something to her, and she verbally attacked me again. She's like, you've been calling my kids racist names and stuff. And I said, no, ma'am, I have not. And she kept getting angrier and angrier. The more I said no, the angrier she got. So finally I said, I was terrified.
She has no criminal record, which is also a significant factor. However, we also have a tremendous harm inflicted upon this family and the victim's family. So what I'm going to do in this case is she being adjudicated guilty of manslaughter with a firearm and order to serve 25 years in the Department of Corrections with credit for 538 days.
Unnecessary. So unnecessary. Our thoughts are with those children tonight. Speaking of children, please take a look at your television screens. We have a missing child tonight. This is Wyatt Richard Cottle, 12 years old, missing out of Phoenix, Arizona since November 21st. What you can do is you can pick up the phone, make a call, make the difference. You can call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or the Scottsdale Police Department in Arizona. That phone number's up on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Wyatt to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of live true crime. We're going to take a look at the latest in the case involving that Kentucky sheriff who shot the judge in chambers on video. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.